I like this new setup.
Omar has authority.
I know. He has power now.
Just wait till I figure out what all those other buttons
I know.
do.
Push all the buttons. See what happens.
I hope one's an air horn.
This is Stephanie Diaz de Leon.
This is Omar Waheed.
And this is Rob Chappell.
And it's 365 Amplified with Omar with the controls.
Yes, we are slightly set up differently.
Uh-huh.
And now I have the power of this podcast. And I'm going to make some changes.
I'm going to push some buttons.
Namely, we have a soundboard. And that noise might be featured more in the future. We'll see.
We'll figure it out. No worries. Let's go ahead and move into our first story.
Before we get into the first story, I just want to mention Hallie Claflin from Wisconsin Watch is going to join us in a little bit to talk about police relocating homeless people around the state of Wisconsin. But you were saying?
I guess there's something going on in Green Bay this weekend, Rob?
Something where
The draft?
some
I'm just kidding.
footballing players,
Sports
ball players are gathering to just find out what team they're going to be on next year.
Yeah.
Some college guys, and this has been the first time it's ever been in Green Bay.
Yep.
At Lambeau Field.
I was going to say, you're really underselling it.
Yeah.
It's not Lambeau Field,
There you
frozen tundra. But the city's been preparing this for a couple of years. I think,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
right. Yeah.
They're doing so many different programs.
Uh-huh.
They bring out Black-owned vendors, minority-owned vendors. They're
Yep.
doing all these charitable things with organizations across the state, art, so on and forth.
Mm-hmm.
The Packers have been preparing is
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
they're doing.
Yeah, and really leaning into diversity, which has
Nice to see.
ruffled the feathers of former NFL kicker Chris Jackie.
Who's that?
Packers fans will remember Chris Jackie.
Who that?
He's
Are you relevant anymore? Sit down.
He's gone full. He's gone full MAGA apparently.
Well, nobody. I mean, don't give him a. Don't give him like a shout out. Like
No.
this.
Does Aaron Rodgers turn full MAGA, or was it just the vaccines and health thing?
I think he's sort of gone full weirdo. I'm not sure
I think he's
Yeah,
gone
that's what I
pretty
thought.
full narcissist. Let's just
Yeah,
say that.
mhm.
Okay, like maybe like
Well,
full
he is God's only son, so that's fair.
let's just say full narcissist,
I'm
right?
not, I'm not sure his
leaning to that.
narcissism has any ideology.
Yeah.
But-
It might not. Other than that, it centers himself. So
Mhm. But the NFL did do some workshops in Green Bay and in Milwaukee and in Madison
yeah,
to help businesses get
opportunities.
get like the certifications that you need.
Yeah.
Because you need certain certifications to be qualified as a minority business enterprise for government contracting
Mhm.
purposes. So it's a useful thing to have. But also in their supply chain diversity program, they want to have. They're not. It's not that they're giving preference necessarily, but they want to make sure that enough.
They have access. It's all about
Yeah.
access.
Mhm.
That's all it is, y'all. It's
Mhm.
not even like they get preferential treatment. It's that they get access. And the process is expensive, time-consuming,
Mhm.
and once again, expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if you don't know how to do it correctly, the cost of that mistake
Mhm.
can set you back and make you not want to do it anymore.
Right.
So what they did was try to give access by giving information and empowering people,
Right.
folks who are in marginalized communities, own businesses, but others as well could have attended it so that they can get access.
Right, and
You
so
know.
that the NFL could know that we have a diverse pool of businesses bidding on these projects.
Well, because they want to,
And events
also,
and stuff.
because they also want to see a
Yeah.
diverse
Yeah.
audience that they're able to serve, right? Like
Right.
it's not just one
Mhm.
audience.
Which is, by definition,
Uh-huh.
diversity, equity, inclusion, and affirmative
Uh-huh.
action. That's all that is.
That's all it
If you
is.
didn't know, it's just making
Access.
them know that these opportunities are out there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
it's just a better communication plan, y'all. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's just communicating to people
Mhm.
what their resources are there, and then giving opportunities to educate them on how to go through the process. Right? Nobody, gets to jump ahead. Nobody gets necessarily like any extra like points or an extra $50 in this process. Right? Like
right.
these things are layered and complicated, and they're sometimes made to do so so that only those who have time, money, and support can do that. And that's all it is. It's
Yeah.
about access, you all.
Right. And but that's been going on for the last year and a half, 2 years, and it's all culminating today.
Yep.
Tonight is the first round, and then 2 rounds tomorrow, and a couple more rounds Saturday. Dave Dahmer is there, our
Woohoo.
colleague Dave, but he's not covering it. They made that very clear.
He's there to enjoy.
He's there. He's picking up some friends in Sheboygan and
Uh-huh.
heading up there because he's a massive Packer fan, and so every time we ask, like, you gonna send pictures or like, he's like, no,
No.
I'm not working.
He's off, y'all. So if you see Dave, say hi.
You have the internet. You will find out too. You can post it.
He's like, I'm out.
Yep. But we do have yesterday morning we posted sort of a draft preview from Dexter Patterson, a good friend of ours, and Nick. You'll notice Nick is absent from the podcast. He's a bit under the weather, so if he's feeling up to it, Nick will give us a sort of a post-draft analysis early next week. We hope. One other thing I just want to mention that unrelated to the MBE, the Meta Business Enterprise contracts, whatever, there was born at least one new business that's not directly related to the draft, but definitely opened because of the draft, which is a new cafe there called Off the Trail, which was funny. We did our most influential Native American list a couple of weeks ago, and I basically just reached out to everybody there, and I said, anybody want to just be featured? I'll write a feature on you. And Apache Danforth, who I've talked to before, she runs a PR firm and a travel company that is dedicated to specifically Native American tourism, Native American cultural heritage tours and stuff. And so I called her just to do like a feature, and I just kind of said to her, so what do you got going on? And she's like, well, I'm opening my new restaurant tomorrow. And I was like, I feel like that's the story. But her partner and his friend are in the construction business. He owns a trucking company and a concrete company, and in December, January, that's like kind of their slow period. So they were like, I think we want to open a laundromat.
Yeah.
So they're looking for space to open a laundromat, and they found this space that was owned by, these are all Oneida Nation folks. So this space that was owned by the Oneida Retail Division. They operate these one-stop convenience stores, and there was this empty spot that used to be a restaurant. They were like, maybe not laundromat, but maybe restaurant. So they connected with Apache Danforth and Jamie Betters, who has worked in food sovereignty with the nation for a long time. And they opened a cafe a couple of weekends ago. And kind of with the thought that there's going to be a lot of people in town in a couple of weeks. And then, that'll be great. And it's not strictly indigenous food, but it's sort of indigenous inspired. And it's going to be like kind of brunch and lunch, like 9 to 2 every day. But then they're also going to bring in chefs, indigenous chefs, do some cooking workshops. They're going to do a Three Sisters garden outside, awesome. Which is awesome. So it's definitely indigenous, like it's sort of coded, throughout. But anyway, it's I've got a story up. We'll put a link to that so you can see where that's at and stop by sometime. They're going to have like a formal grand opening after the draft, and I definitely plan to go up there and sample some and cover that. So take a look at that. And we'll be, and we'll also talk about the football part of it.
Yeah.
Next week, probably.
Sports ball.
Right.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and move into our next story we want to talk about this morning, Rob.
Omar. There's some THC drinking happening.
Yes, there is.
So awkward, Rob.
Yeah.
I
don't know very little about THC infused beverages, but Omar knows more than I do. So
I know a lot. Take that as you will.
Yeah. Where is that soundboard?
Yeah. Wait. See? I'm in charge. On April 22nd, a bunch of THC drink vendors came out to the Rigby Bar in downtown Madison to give people a chance to, try out some THC infused drinks. They had 4 vendors from across the state, notably Candigenous, the first indigenous-owned cannabis company. They showed off their Tempo THC seltzers. United Arts, the brewery from Wanakee, decided to launch their own THC sodas.
Okay.
And there's Honeybee Cannabis Company, Madison-based. They launched their own line of seltzers, and is actually the only THC seltzer you can get at a bar on draft, which is pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Rigby is launching their own in-house THC drink. So people came out, had the chance to test 10 different drinks. I, of course, as a journalist, tried all of them.
You have to.
Of course, for journalistic purposes. People were surprised about the general taste. Most of the people that are there, they're just regular bar patrons. It happened to be trivia night also. So after the little event, they did the trivia. But in the meantime, since it's free, they tried all these drinks. A lot of them didn't really want to talk to me because it's THC. It's not entirely legal, but in Wisconsin, it's in a weird kind of middle ground place. You see all these shops popping up, but no one's really saying you can't do it.
I think it's technically speaking like decriminalized, right? But
it is
still
decriminalized in Madison.
Okay.
When it's not legal. So it's
federally, especially, it's not legal.
Federally, it's definitely still 100% illegal. But Madison sits in a weird place. So all these companies came out to, have people sample it. And people were surprised. It didn't taste like you were drinking weed. They are flavorful drinks like Mystic Orbits, the Mystic Orbit sodas. They went after kind of nostalgic childhood flavors. They had like an orange dreamsicle style orange one.
Nice.
Peach, grape, just, generic flavors that just tasted pretty good. Candigenous, the people there said, hey, if this wasn't even THC, I would still buy it. It's a great taste. I would buy just a normal Candigenous Tempo seltzer. There was one guy who did talk to me a bit. His name is Frank from Ankeny. He is on a booze cruise across the country and just happened to be there. So we bonded over Iowa. At first he said, I'm not going to give you my name. And then he told me, hey, I'm Frank. So I don't.
All right, Frank.
Yeah.
Way to play games.
I'm pretty sure he is on his way to Tennessee for his next stop, but he enjoyed it. He says he'd never tried a THC infused drink before, but was very surprised about Honeybee's pineapple mango seltzer. Honeybee itself said that's one we're kind of having a problem with. People like it, but the thickness of the juice kind of sits at the bottom, so you have to kind of shake it up a little bit.
Nice.
But people love the flavor. He loved it. He said he would buy it again anytime. So yeah.
Is this? I remember we talked about sort of the THC business that indigenous nations are especially leaning into right now. That because of the federal regulation, you can't do anything else. You can't move stuff between states.
No, you can't.
Right? So the entire supply chain and the entire production process has to happen within Wisconsin. Is that true of these drinks also?
That is true. Everything from its growth, processing, and making it into actual sellable products is all domestic in states due to the lack of federal legality and the interstate commerce clauses that prevent it from being traveled between state to state. So all these places, every single state where it's legal or technically not, it's domestically produced.
The entire vertical is within the state borders, which is really, it's difficult to pull off, right? But it's also literally everything. If you buy one of these drinks or shop at one of these shops, it's all local.
They're
right?
all Wisconsin-made products if you buy them in Wisconsin.
Yep.
Even the bigger brands that are around the country, they still have to grow their specific thing in Wisconsin, so they'll license out some type of growth facility.
Okay.
So yeah.
I mean, it's great.
Yeah.
And also, what was the man's name?
Frank?
Frank. Thank you for sharing your name. Maybe he just wanted to be chased a little bit. He wanted you to
No, he
no,
didn't really want to talk until he realized we were both from Iowa.
Oh, so he needed to feel connection with you first.
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah.
But that was it. He was also kind of a little drunk already. So most of what he said was nonsense. But
yeah,
he's having fun on his booze cruise.
Yeah, I mean,
Fantastic.
Who doesn't have fun on? I mean, maybe some people don't. I don't know. I've never been on a booze cruise, and it's okay. Let's go ahead and move into our next story, which was with Omar. Yes.
Still, yes,
Still.
me more.
Again, it is Omar's day. This is why he gets the soundboard.
Mhm.
I know,
so
it's
cute.
great. I'm having a blast.
I know.
Um,
I will also acknowledge, though, you have not hit the button for with the applause. So it's not like you're letting your ego
I know,
get away
right?
from it. Like
It's
just enough. There's a line, and you won't cross it.
I'm very grounded and humble. On April 23rd, around 100 people came to the state capitol for a citizen lobbying effort to call for an end of Assembly Bill 553, which was passed in 2018, that outlawed the boycotting of Israel for companies that have any contract over $100,000 with the state. This was organized by Wisconsin Coalition for Justice in Palestine and Wisconsin Right to Boycott. They gathered in the state capitol at the Northwest 328 room, which is very, very hard to find.
You gotta earn that.
Yes, I know exactly where that room is, but it's very difficult to everything in the Capitol is very hard to find.
Especially specific rooms that are not the main rooms. I got lost in the state capitol. I walked past it one time. I didn't realize it was that room because there was a Native American man with the whole regalia and necklace. Like, that can't be the right place. So I just kept circling around, and then I saw someone with a keffiyeh. I was like, oh, maybe
this is it.
Maybe that was it.
The building is completely symmetrical.
Yeah.
Which makes it difficult. You're not ever sure which way you're facing. And also, they do the European convention where the second floor is called the first floor.
Yes, they do that.
What?
There's the ground floor, and then the first floor, and then the second floor, and so on, which makes it confusing. Anyway, sorry to derail that. What was happening in that room once you finally found it?
After 20 minutes of walking around the state capitol's third floor, people were gathered to get ready to lobby to the various elected officials in Wisconsin who were hopefully there that day, but surprise, surprise, most of them were busy. They had a green folder filled with information regarding the anti-boycott bill, along with a letter from a local rabbi and a letter calling for action to protect freedom of speech in Wisconsin. The lobbyists claim that the boycott bill limits freedom of speech for businesses. It is a bill it's more or less a copy or paste bill from the American Legislative Exchange Council.
Very conservative organization.
Very conservative organization, which I'm learning about today or yesterday. Yeah, it's just all over the country. 38 states have the bill itself.
Specific to Israel.
And only Israel, which the lobbyists brought up that point, is there's plenty of countries where you could have plenty of problems with, but we don't have any bills preventing us from boycotting them.
So you can boycott, if you have a state contract, you can boycott Russia.
You could boycott Russia.
You can boycott Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely.
But you can't boycott Israel.
You cannot boycott Israel. And it gives the state the right to cancel your contract if for some reason you already secured it, and then suddenly now to have a anti-Israel stance. Yeah.
Do you get a sense that the legislatures that they did talk to were receptive to repealing this?
It seemed like most of them didn't actually know what the bill was.
I was going to say, like, how many of them actually, like, the first question was, like, how many are actually aware of what the bill, that one, the bill exists, two, that they know what's in the bill, what it means, and what the impact is, and then, like what side are they on about it?
It's very hard to have a side when you don't know what it is.
Yep.
I tagged along with one group with their green folders that went to Representative William Pennerman's office. He wasn't there, but his staff was, and they had no idea about the bill. They didn't realize the overreach it had, where it could affect businesses that have absolutely nothing to do with business relationships to Israel, like childcare facilities or domestic violence shelters or Orphanages. Absolutely nothing to do with Israel, but if they do personally have some type of boycott, sanction, divest stance, then they lose their contract. I also tagged along with them to Robin Voss's office. Robin Voss, very, very busy man. We saw him walk by and try to, catch up with him. But I don't know if you've seen him walk before, but speed walker, practically sprinting.
Yeah, I bet.
When you become Speaker of the Assembly, like you learn how to walk past people quickly.
Very, very quickly. So we didn't get to talk to him, but we got to talk to his staff, a Mark Feehan. He's a research assistant with Robin Voss's office. And he was actually genuinely interested in it and was hoping to learn more about it. And the lobbyists obliged. So he's getting well educated on it and plans to push some stuff to Robin Voss. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah,
we'll see.
And the last thing we're going to talk about before the break is the Society of St. Vincent de Paul Madison, who we've covered. You've done some coverage of them when they opened their new headquarters and stuff, didn't you, last year? Did you go to
Yes, I did do that.
It was a while ago now.
I did also think that was the 100-year celebration. It was not. Turns out that was a whole year later.
It was not. Yeah, they're celebrating their centennial this year. They kicked it off earlier this week with a sort of a luncheon event that Omar went to. And I got to talk to them last week as well. They are, everybody knows St. Vinny's is where you go to shop for cheap stuff, right? When I first moved back to the Madison area, like 20 years ago, I completely outfitted my apartment from the Dig and Save, which is fantastic. But maybe what folks don't know is when you're shopping there, you're supporting a lot of good programming, such as the only like nonprofit free access pharmacy in the state. Where folks who don't have insurance and can't afford it can get medication for chronic conditions, especially. They've got lockers for homeless people to store their stuff. Everything they do is like targeted on homelessness, so we've got this article just on St. Vincent and their 100th anniversary and what they're planning to do. They're going to have this kickoff event that Omar went to, and then they're going to have another event in the summer, and then a gala fundraiser in September. Just a lot of the good work that they do. And it was interesting looking back. 1925 was when they started. Obviously, it was sort of informal before that, and they got some startup funding from the Milwaukee chapter in 1925, and they had basically a storage place where they would collect stuff that would then get redistributed to poor people, and that was on Williamson Street, and that eventually turned into the thrift store. Now they have 7 across the county. But what was the event like yesterday? It was over at the Alliant Energy Center.
It was at Alliant Energy Center. It was a big luncheon where they just kind of spoke on their history a bit, from its founder, Frederick Ozanam. I don't know how to pronounce that name, but they just went through their history and thanked people and asked people to think about, how has St. Vinny's impacted your life? What's your St. Vinny's story?
All right, thanks for that, Omar. Thanks for all your reporting this week. And we're going to take a break and be back right after this.
With Hallie Claflin.
And we're back, and joining us now from Wisconsin Watch, Hallie Claflin. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on here and giving us the time, and thanks for this reporting that you've been doing. This is kind of a long-term project that you've been kind of working on. Right? Tell us about first of all, I'll give like the big overview of the story that we're publishing that you put out yesterday. We're putting out today at Madison 365. Is there's this practice across the state of police sort of relocating unhoused people, just sort of like dropping off in other communities to deal with. We'll get into that a little bit, but tell us about the bigger project that this is part of.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have been investigating homelessness across the state for the better part of the last 6 months at Wisconsin Watch.
Hmm.
And I've particularly been looking into rural homelessness. Rural homelessness is just a lot different, sort of in people's perceptions of what homelessness is. I think a lot of people perceive it as street homelessness, people sleeping on benches in parks, really kind of associating homelessness with the more urban areas of the
Hmm.
state and of the nation. But what we found in a December investigation that we published was that the state's rural homelessness population has been increasing every year since 2021, according to some annual homelessness counts, the sort of referred to as the pit counts, the point in time counts. And so, we really kind of spurred this project of really trying to call attention to more rural issues when it comes to housing insecurity and poverty, in ways that people typically maybe don't see when they think of more urban homelessness. And so
Hmm.
it's definitely a problem out in kind of the more rural and smaller counties all across Wisconsin. Although it's a little less visible than sometimes urban homelessness is. So yeah, we've been really looking into sort of the rural aspect for quite a few months now.
And less visible, probably because it's kind of just less. Well, first of all, it's there are fewer people walking around and seeing people that are
Mhm.
homeless in rural areas, but also it's probably just is it just less. It's more spread out. Maybe is that
Yeah.
fair? A fair guess?
Definitely more spread out, and I would say in the more rural areas, you have a lot more people who are sleeping in their cars, they're couch
Mm.
surfing, they're sleeping in a friend's basement, they're sleeping in a friend's garage. They bounce from place to place, because there aren't really shelters and there aren't really a lot of resources and a lot of nonprofit. There's not a huge nonprofit concentration in a lot of rural areas, so
Mhm.
it's a little bit harder to see. You don't typically see very many people, yeah, typically sleeping on the streets or
Right, right.
in public areas.
And the sort of the final installment of this longer term investigation is this issue with the police picking folks up and dropping them off elsewhere. Tell us, um, first of all, just what is that? How does that work? What
Mhm.
did you find?
Yeah, so eventually, we sort of, once we got down this whole path,
Mhm.
we've really found that this was a statewide issue. But what really spurred it was this incident in Eau Claire, and Eau Claire might have been sort of, one of the first places to really point this out. In
Mhm.
January, the city attorney of Eau Claire had sent a letter to the Attorney General of Wisconsin, Josh Call, asking him to come down with a legal opinion and kind of determine whether this practice is legal or not and kind of
Mhm.
make a statement about it. But once we did more digging, we definitely found that this is not just an Eau Claire issue. This is something that's happening statewide where, uh, you know, in many of the smaller, more rural regions where there really aren't homeless shelters, there aren't, mental health clinics, there aren't, hospitals are more spread out. You have a lot of police who, when they come across someone who's homeless, someone, sleeping in a parking lot, sleeping out on a street or in a yard, when they do sort of come in contact with those folks, are really just transporting them and offering them sort of what they call courtesy rides, to whatever resource is the closest, which is almost always in a more urban center.
Oh,
So
sure, sure.
think La Crosse, Waukesha, Madison, Milwaukee, things like that. And so you have a lot of law enforcement just kind of doing their best, I think is what I would characterize it as, taking them to whatever is nearest, which then kind of in turn, really sort of puts a little bit more pressure on some of these more urban centers
Mhm.
who, then have to sort of take in the capacity as well as serving their own homeless populations. It puts a little bit more pressure on their resources, uses up some of their resources. Shelters are often already full. Treatment facilities often already full. And so it's sort of become a problem. But I think particularly with this drop-offs issue, the main problem is that when these people are taken to these city centers, a lot of times they're not receiving care. And that's kind of the most important part of calling attention to this issue is that, sometimes they're being dropped off at gas stations. Sometimes they're being dropped off at homeless shelters that are full or aren't open. And so, it's one thing to, try to get these people to a resource, but, if they're not actually receiving care and receiving services once they get there, it just creates some trouble, not just for that city and that community, but also in terms of getting this person help and eventually, getting them back to where they are from and where they need to get to. So it's definitely an issue.
Yeah, when you first started talking about that, I started thinking, well, this sounds nice, actually. That police are trying to help out. But then dropping it off at a gas station isn't particularly helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the instances cited in the Eau Claire City Attorney's letter. Was one of the police departments had dropped someone off at a quick trip or something, and
So
it's very helpful.
Was the city attorney in Eau Claire writing this from the perspective of a city who was in receipt of unhoused people?
Yes,
And,
absolutely.
Are these outlying communities around Eau Claire County legal in driving these people into Eau Claire and dropping them off?
Yeah.
Has the Attorney General issued that opinion yet?
He hasn't, and it's sort of a toss-up. I've tried to press the city, or not, excuse me, the Attorney General's office on it a little bit. I haven't really received a response yet. It could be months, it could be years. It's sort of difficult with these things. Sometimes he issues an opinion very quickly, sometimes he doesn't, and of course, there's the question of, sort of whichever way he goes with this, whichever kind of ruling and opinion he comes down with, there's going to be one group of people either way that is sort of unhappy.
I'm sure.
If he says, this is legal, you're going to have cities who have their resources sort of depleted sometimes from this practice who are going to be upset. If he says you can't do it, you have some of these local law enforcement out in the smaller rural counties that are going to say, well, this is our only option. We don't have any other ways to get these people to where they need to go, especially if he comes down and says it's illegal. Some of those local law enforcement agencies are going to have to contract out with other agencies and organizations who will then transport these people, which is then going to be a cost. It's going to add sort of a cost barrier to their agency. So, so there's going to be sort of a loser, maybe either way.
I will say I have found that the Attorney General's office does not respond well to being pressed.
Yeah.
I should say they don't respond well. I should say they don't respond at all. Has been my experience. But so I'm wondering if because the thing is, I guess in a way, being driven to an Eau Claire gas station is better than being put in jail. I suppose, which is often the police's option,
Yeah.
But at the same time, police officers are not social workers.
Right.
So they're not equipped or even particularly motivated to actually take a case through the process to get them the support. But perhaps this Attorney General's opinion could kind of force that on them. Like you said, like imagine contract out to other agencies who are actually equipped to actually connect people with services.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's really interesting just because this is something that's been going on for so long. It's actually surprising that it's taken this long for somebody actually to bring this to the Attorney General's office and say, can you, come down with an opinion on this? It's sort of something that was just kind of so routine and kind of considered so normal that police would just sort of do this, especially when they had no other option. And so it's really, really interesting that this is something that's sort of been brought to his attention now that he can kind of come down on.
Were you able to connect with anybody who was unhoused and had this happen to them? And like, what's the impact on those folks? Like you mentioned, like they're from a place that's maybe an hour drive away.
Yeah.
And that's probably where they want to be.
Yeah.
And now they're in a city an hour away and with what are they supposed to do? Like, how does that impact their life?
Yeah, I didn't connect personally with any of the individuals in this particular instance or, in Eau Claire and in this story in particular. But the city attorney of Eau Claire really was able to speak to this. He mentioned that, these people actually usually are pretty appreciative. And I did see that in the body cam footage that I obtained from the Durand Police Department. In no way, shape, or form was that officer, forcing this woman to get in the back of the squad car and go to Eau Claire.
Okay.
She was actually, pretty, happy to, have somewhere to go. She was pretty distraught, mentioning that she didn't know what to do. Her ride didn't show up. She didn't have anywhere to stay for the night. And when he mentioned a shelter, she was, pretty happy to take that ride. And he was kind and courteous to her. The problem, though, that the city attorney in Eau Claire has really pointed to is that, these people aren't asking to go to Eau Claire, nor do they really know where Eau Claire is, nor
Right.
do they have any ties to Eau Claire. And it's being suggested to them. It's being brought up by, the officers. They are suggesting,
Well,
do you want to go to the shelter in Eau Claire? And so,
when the person doesn't have any other option right then.
exactly.
We're talking like immediate right now, right? Like,
Exactly. Yep. And
Mhm.
it's sort of, the city attorney has argued that when a law enforcement officer in uniform suggests to someone,
yeah.
you should go somewhere, they're not really maybe always in the position to say no. And so, there is a little bit of gray area there. These people,
Sure.
by no means are they being forced in the back of a squad car. And
No, but
usually,
yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it gets troubling when they then arrive in a city where they don't know that city. They don't know anyone there. It just makes it difficult for them to get back to where they're going.
Right. Do folks end up like sort of long-term relocated then?
I would imagine. And I think,
Sometimes?
it becomes a problem too. I mean, in the instances that were cited in the letter to the attorney general, the city attorney really, mentioned that once these people got to Eau Claire, they then had to be taken to the hospital. They then had citations for indecent exposure. They had run-ins with law enforcement in Eau Claire. And so it really sort of becomes this issue for Eau Claire resources and agencies who then sort of have to deal with some of the
Right.
follow-up care for these people once they get there. And I've mentioned this to the police chief of the Durand Police Department. How do you get these people back to Durand? How do you get them back to where they came from? Is there any follow-up? He sort of argued that that's out of their control, and that's beyond that's beyond their jurisdiction. And once they're in Eau Claire, they're there.
Well,
And
that's it. But that's what I mean. The police aren't social workers. They're not going to follow the
right,
case.
right,
through,
exactly.
Right? But to what extent is this? Is there any sense? Did you get any sense from any police officers or the police chief that this is kind of just like we're trying to clean up our streets
Mhm.
and make it somebody else's problem?
Yeah, I spoke
Or maybe
to
they don't want them back.
yeah,
You know?
I spoke to the police chief in Waukesha as well, who mentioned, there are sort of he helped clarify the issue in the sense that there are two sorts of drop-offs. There are drop-offs where a law enforcement officer genuinely is just doing their best and trying to get somebody to whatever, nearest resource they can get them to, a shelter, a hospital, whatever it may be. And there's another sort of drop-off where it really appears like there are some local law enforcement agencies out there who want to shift the burden of this problem onto some of the larger cities. They're really just trying to get rid of somebody and dump them and drop them off.
Yeah.
He says, this has been a particular issue at the Waukesha Memorial Hospital. Sometimes law enforcement agencies just dump people there, leave them, and there's no follow-up after that. Those people don't receive services. They later become a problem. And so, there's definitely two directions this can go in.
Well, and we talk a lot about on this show and about intent versus impact, right? And even whatever the intent, whichever of those two intentions the police officer has, the impact is kind of the same. Right?
Absolutely.
A person is displaced, a person is in an unfamiliar city, and the city has to take care of them.
Yeah, the
Right.
city attorney of Eau Claire spoke to that really, really beautifully. He kind of said, I don't think that these officers were intending any harm, but he said they were doing their best to get somebody services, but the message has to get out there that they weren't helped and they didn't receive services. And so, this whole drop-off practice really needs to be visited.
Well, and going back to the sort of root cause of this, I mean, we can like shake our finger at the police, but the fact is that the resources aren't there. And
Absolutely.
rural homelessness is a real thing, and it's a real problem, and it's getting worse. So, is
Mm,
there any talk at a legislative level or even at county levels
yeah.
about addressing the root cause?
I certainly wish there was more talk at the
Mm.
state level.
Mhm.
I would imagine it is being brought up at the local level because it has
Mhm.
become such a problem for these local,
Yeah.
police and law enforcement agencies.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think when people look at this, they sort of just see this, especially the Eau Claire example. They sort of just saw this as like a tiff between local
Mm.
agencies and local governments. But it really is a statewide problem, and I think people are missing the root cause here and the underlying problem, which really is a huge lack of resources and services and housing programs that are in rural areas, which then, leaves these people with no options. It leaves law enforcement with no other options. They have to then do their best and transport these
Mhm.
people. And I think a lot of these transports wouldn't be happening if there were more rural resources.
Right.
In the case of Durand in particular, there are no homeless shelters in Pepin County. So, um,
None?
none. Yeah, yeah. And there are quite a few counties in Wisconsin actually
Yeah,
that,
that
that
kinda makes
have
sense now that you think about it.
yeah, they have no shelters. And so, when you think about it, some will argue, it's not worth it to, operate a shelter or a facility in a rural region where maybe there are only 20, unhoused folks. But as we've seen, the numbers show the numbers continue to rise in rural areas ever
Mhm.
since sort of the pandemic. And
Mhm.
so it really is more of a problem than people often see. And
Yeah.
I've connected with a lot of rural shelter workers all across Wisconsin. And even when shelters do get built in rural areas like Taylor County, they're always full. So,
Okay.
it kind of speaks to the need. You might
Yeah.
not think a shelter needs to be built or a facility or a permanent housing program needs to be built in a small rural town or a small rural county, but
Mhm.
once they are, we see that they're almost always at capacity, and so that really speaks to the need, I think.
Yeah. Can we quantify this a little bit? Maybe ground it, like, you say it's increased since 2021.
Mhm.
By how much? By what percentage? By what numbers?
Yeah, in the last year, rural homelessness particularly
Mhm.
increased by about 9%. So
Okay.
that was in 2020, according to 2024 numbers. The
Mhm.
2025 pit count numbers aren't out yet.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
but the pit count is really tricky. That's the main way that homelessness is measured, not just in
Uh-huh.
Wisconsin, but
Right.
nationwide.
Mhm.
It's really difficult because it's based on a single count on a single night in January. It's not really giving a full picture of how many people are actually unhoused. It's just a one-night snapshot of how many people volunteers were able to find on one single night.
Which is
So
Yeah. Which is useful for comparison purposes from one year to the
yes.
next,
Yeah,
but it doesn't
certainly.
necessarily give you an accurate number of actually how many people, because
Right.
by the very nature, especially in rural homelessness, like, there's
Mhm.
probably a lot of people they never even saw or
Yeah,
found or
the
counted.
majority of people they are not
Right.
finding on this
Right.
pit count night. And but yeah, it is actually from what I've heard from researchers, they've said, it is very useful to use for
Mhm.
a year by year
Right.
comparison because it the methodology is the same every single year in the
Mhm.
way that they collect the counts. And
Mhm.
it's really wrong, but it's wrong the same way every year. It's wrong every year, and so if you see it increasing, it likely means that, the population is
Right.
increasing. So, yeah.
Yeah, so it tells you if homelessness is going up or down and kind of roughly by how much,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
which is useful, and the
Z
fact is it's going up in rural counties. Is it?
Yep. Yeah, yeah.
And did you get a sense as to how many, like, did the city attorney in Eau Claire quantify how many people have been dropped off in a year or something like that?
Yeah, it's difficult because the pit count numbers sort of they don't come out by county, they come out by
Oh,
region, so it's a little
okay, okay.
difficult, but, you know, the city attorney was able to speak to just the fact that, they have seen an uptick sort of since,
Mhm,
some of those, pandemic, resources were rolled back, they
mhm,
had
mhm,
seen an uptick. The Sojourner House, which is kinda one of the main homeless shelters in Eau Claire, is actually facing a potential, funding threat. They might have to reduce their operations down to 6 months instead of operating for a full year. they've been citing, funding losses, volunteer losses. And so, uh, and they on the night of the pit count this year, actually, they had opened their overflow spaces, and they have a normal capacity of around 50, 60, and I think they housed somewhere in the 70s. And so, yeah, it really, it's a really hard thing to quantify. But you can kind of get a sense by, gauging how many shelters are full, how often they're full, how often they're opening overflow spaces, how measuring street homelessness sometimes too is an okay way of guesstimating, but even the pit count isn't really that accurate, but it is very useful for a year-to-year comparison.
Got it. Well, Hallie, appreciate the reporting and appreciate your time today. Thanks,
Yeah.
and keep up the good work.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And we're back.
And you have a question?
I do have a question. It's a really simple one, but it's a difficult question, I think, still. Very simple. 3 words. Saturday or Sunday?
Sunday. I like Sundays because Saturday, that's the rest day. That's the day where people are like,
Oh, sure.
I gotta go, run all these errands. And then Sunday, people are like, oh, I did all that. Let me just stay at home. The streets are clearer. The lines are shorter. That you'll run into church people depending on what time you're out, but then they're gone for most of the day. Easy access to everything. You don't barely have to wait at stoplights. Just zip through a nonstop. The cops are out less, so you can just drive as fast as you want. It's the
We are
perfect
not
day.
encouraging folks to drive too much over the speed limit. Safety first.
In Madison?
Yeah.
Have you seen the drivers? No.
From Cali, yeah, I know
But
drivers.
drive safe.
Drive safe, but also less
Yeah.
drivers on the street.
But just on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's easier to be safe on Sunday because there's just fewer people.
Just watch out for Omar because he's going
He's
down
got
these
his ears.
streets.
Omar has no cares on the
60
Sunday.
and a 30.
No. But there are no school kids out, so actually maybe. No.
Exactly.
No, but that's,
There's
they're
no
like
school
32.
kids out. There's less people out.
There is less people out because I'm not out on Sundays. I agree. Sundays are Saturdays feels like look, and this is, you can tell I'm done with this week already because I'm already thinking about the weekend. And I've thought, because I thought about this question last week. I was like, oh, I'm done already. So, but Saturdays feels like all the last minute things that you didn't get done or have to get done before the next week, right? So you're running around doing grocery shopping. I also will argue that Woodman's is busy 7 days a week, 24 hours a day for some people. So Woodman's is never not busy on Sundays. I feel like there are certain spaces and places that are perpetually does not follow your Sunday rule because they're always busy. But it is a much slower, easier. I'm not going out, y'all. I'm not shopping. I'm not driving. I'm not cleaning. Well, maybe I clean a little bit, but when I'm ready to finish. But it feels leisurely on a Sunday than it does on a Saturday. Saturday still feels like engagements, things that we still have to do, and we still have to drive kids around to their things. Rob is slightly letting us know, hey, I'm not going to be home, so awkward. I'm going out this way. So there's just, I think Sundays are the better day.
I'm going to be the dissenting voice and say Saturday for the reasons that you mentioned, that when I'm going somewhere, it's to a soccer game, usually. And Saturday is soccer day. Saturday is, at this time of year, when the European schedule and the American schedule overlap, it's soccer from 6:30 a.m. until midnight. There's some soccer on all the time.
Yeah.
That's why Saturdays are magical. Wonderful.
Saturday at soccer time is Rob's social time, i.e. people who like to talk about soccer. Whether that be just watching the game or you're on your little Twitter or your whatever.
Blue Sky.
Yeah, or Blue Sky, excuse me. Space.
Or there's a if it's a Ford Madison away game, there's a Zoom watch party.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Are you on the Zoom?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, half the time.
I'm waiting for him to say actually I host a Zoom.
No. If the game is not right during dinner, if the game is during dinner time, I will have you know this. I'll have my little iPad.
Yeah.
This is only Ford Madison. This is not but if there's a Ford Madison away game that's not right in the middle of dinner time, David Bagnes from Orlando hosts a Zoom watch party for the Ford Madison diaspora.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Let's take away that language a little bit, Rob. You're all co-opting some things.
people can just say whatever they want now. There's no one thinks about what all these things. There's a scene in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Reminds me of this.
Yeah.
For the Madison expats who have moved away, who've gone away.
Exactly as I said.
You all make it way too much. You all too much. You don't need to take on specific language.
I guess, okay. But that's why I was saying.
Yeah.
Because it's all soccer all the time.
It's soccer. It's also your like. Yeah.
It's also projects. Like yeah. I actually like the projects. Doing projects. Like this weekend, I'm doing a project.
What project are you doing that you like?
The kids and I are gonna build a little rack for the kayaks.
Oh dear God! But that's gonna. So here's the thing: when you when you do those projects, there's a lot of cursing, a lot of frustration.
Sometimes, yeah.
So you could say you like accomplishing something that is.
I do like accomplishing
achievable
something
and accessible
yes.
and stuff like that. But the process sometimes is not enjoyable. But
true.
The end goal is satisfying.
Very true.
Yes. Yeah. But I'm like, wait a minute, no. Also, isn't it going to rain this weekend?
Yeah, maybe it might.
Yeah, you might have this weekend. Next weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Is it an outdoor rack?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, well, yeah, I guess.
It's a bunch of. Why are you building one? What does that mean? You're building one? You're going to get some wood?
Yeah.
Oh no. But isn't okay? Could you just buy something and just put that together? Can you
Yeah, but where's the love in that? Where's the craftsmanship?
That would cost like 100 times more.
It would not. I bet you I could find it good.
I looked.
So
I
much
looked.
more.
I happened to be getting gas on Rimrock Road the other day, and I thought, as long as I'm here, I might as well stop by a Rutabaga.
Oh no, don't go there. I mean, I'm sure they're lovely, but also
they're lovely, but they're very expensive. So the racks that they have are very expensive, and I don't know where else in Madison has.
Give me a second.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't know how you have 3 kayaks. Who did that? Who let you do that? Who bought those for you? Those ridiculous people. Yeah. So here's the thing. They were all driving me crazy inside the house.
2 years ago, maybe?
It was during COVID.
Yeah.
And all 3 of you were driving me crazy in the house because you all.
And we were kind of saying, like, summer's coming. We have to do
there was
things
no
outside.
I said, because Rob was also rather stressed and he needs to be outside. He needed to do something physical. And I said, what if I buy you a kayak? And Rob's like, well, I'm like, so I'm going to buy you a kayak. And I'm not buying 1, I'm buying 3 because we're not doing these 2 shared because whoever is in those 2 are going to fight. Mm-hmm. I don't care if it's just the 2 kids. I don't care if it's Rob and a kid. They all going to fight. So everyone gets their own kayak because I don't want to hear about it and go outside because get out of my house because you are all too much right now.
And we do that.
You do all the time.
Yep. We've already been out once fishing this spring.
This kind of even though it was kind of cold when you went.
It was chilly, but
but you all tend to
I still caught a northern pike.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I don't.
A little one, but
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
It's a fish.
I know.
It's a fish.
See, a lot of people got into making bread during COVID.
Yeah. They went outside and got into like
camping,
kayaking and camping a lot, and they needed it. I do encourage and like whatever supplies you need, go outside because they need to be outside in a way that helps keep perpetual peace in the house.
Yeah, right.
For everybody, but. Yeah, people. Did you get into baking while? Like, was that your thing?
I already liked baking before.
So you're like, I already did this. I'm not a hoser.
You're making bread now? I've been making bread. Wow. There goes all the supplies. Like, everyone else sucks but me.
Also, you are driving the cost of my supplies up. Knock it off.
Supply chains.
Supply chain. Also, like you need a sourdough starter. I already got one. I've had it for years.
Like, yeah, come on, catch up, everyone.
I did not do the bread thing. I did not do anything other than no.
We did a lot of news things.
Yes, we did
a lot of podcasting during that period.
We did. Yes, they go kayaking and they go camping. I encourage them and help financially support it when necessary and when needed, but.
And then some days you come down and do a little hiking with us. And
yeah, I'll do hiking with you, but I won't hang out that long. I won't sleep.
Rent a pontoon once in a while
Where I
on
can
a Saturday, and then you go home, and then we go sleep in the
Yes.
Wow.
But I go home to my bed.
I feel that.
Yeah, like I'm not. Look, I've already done the camping.
Uh-huh.
I did it in high school with my family when they decided like we should go camp, and the rest of us were like, really? You all know where we're from. You know what we don't do? Camp. But we tried it. It was fine. I encourage everybody who loves it. You should go outdoors. And also, I will be in my soft bed where I won't get wet, dirty, none of the things.
I have Egyptian cotton sheets.
So do
You
I.
can't bring those outside.
So do I. And they're amazing.
They're great.
They're incredible. Invest, if you can, invest in them sheets.
High thread count
Uh-huh.
sheets or Egyptian cotton.
All
Shoot to the top.
all magical. When you get to that age where you can get that for yourself or get that for other people, do it.
I've been on that wave since I've been 16.
Oh, have you really been that bougie since you
I've been bougie all my life, but I started,
I grew
actually
into it.
making my own money instead of working at my dad's store.
Yeah, family business. You like think you're gonna make some money with your family, like, oh no, I have to give it back, or I have to they pay me less. I'm like, dang it, it's hard.
This podcast has taken some turns.
It's fine. It's again, it's not even your podcast right now, Rob.
I know.
It's
Omar's.
Omar.
Omar's
All
got
right.
the board.
All right, that's the end of the podcast. Everyone go about your days.
We'll talk to you all next week.
365 Amplified is produced and edited by me, Rob Chappell, and is a production of 365 Media Foundation, a nonprofit, local, independent media organization in Madison, Wisconsin. Wherever you're listening to this right now, hit the subscribe or follow button to get new episodes every Friday. And between episodes, get your latest news at madison365.org and follow us on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Threads. Wherever you get your news, we'll be there.